Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Epic Meta Podcast. An introspective look into humanity, science fiction, history, and one more thing that I forgot about. George, how's it going?
I think the last item is podcasting itself.
Oh, yes, I always forget about that.
Hmm.
Fantastic. I'll redo it for next time.
Okay.
How are you feeling? You seem awake.
Yeah. I've been up since 5.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I keep forgetting. Even on weekends?
Oh,
Oh, my
yeah.
God.
21 days.
Terrible. Oh,
Well,
well,
I haven't been drinking for almost 2 months now, so that makes it a lot easier.
yeah. Makes sense. Let me see. Yeah, so last episode you interviewed me, so this episode is about Tang interviewing George. So to start out, let's go with some, you know, unlike you that had probably wrote these questions down. I'm just gonna semi wing it, but generally I know what I'm going after. So tell me about your jobs, because I know you work multiple of them. Tell me about your jobs today.
Okay. They are both jobs that I work from home doing. One job I work for an insurance company in litigation management, so my team is involved with hiring and firing the law firms around the country that represent the insurance company in claims litigation and other litigation. We also audit those firms, make sure they're doing their jobs well, and we audit the bills that they submit, and other stuff in that sort of area. So that's
Okay.
one job.
Mm-hmm.
Another job I do more of on a contract basis when I have the time to do it. And that's, I work for a legal services company that also involved in litigation, but it's typically corporate litigation where there's lots of documents that are part of the discovery process of a lawsuit. So during that process, each side requests from the other side any document that is potentially relevant to the litigation. So, with corporations, we're talking about millions of documents potentially. So, all of these documents need to be reviewed for relevancy. To determine whether they are actually relevant to the litigation, and some coding is done to, issue coding so that they can be indexed and referenced later if they're important. And then there's also review for attorney-client privilege. So if a document in any way is reflective of an attorney rendering advice, or someone is soliciting advice from an attorney, then that is privileged and that doesn't need to be handed over to the other side, basically.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sounds fantastic.
Oh, it's fantastically boring, but it pays the bills.
AI is gonna take over your role. Well,
Oh,
even now, there's this thing called OCR recognition. I think ocular something recognition.
yeah.
I'm not sure if you know what I'm referring to, but it's starting to happen already.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's old news now, but
Thank
yeah,
God.
that sounds.
I hope
Yeah,
I
that
I
sounds.
hope I never have to do that again.
But yeah, I think part of it is understanding which AI is gonna have a hard time. Once that chasm is breached, or once that mountain is climbed, or hurdles passed, then yes, we have to worry a bit more. But right now, understanding is the problem, and context is the problem.
Yeah.
But reading the actual words, they're very good at actually understanding what that word is. And human eyes actually have a problem tracking down those things,
Right.
especially with like law codes and all. You could totally like reverse read a number and didn't realize that. Whereas the computers is better at that. But yeah.
Yep. And yeah, AI is already starting, is infiltrating the field. Um, but what AI basically does at this point is filters out a lot of the irrelevant documents. Basically,
Yep.
um, there's some nuance and legal interpretation that I'm not sure AI certainly
Can
can't
do.
do now, but I don't
Yeah.
know if they could get to that level ever. Probably they
Mm,
could,
yeah.
but yeah.
Cool stuff. So, did you go to college for law? Because when I was in school, there was such a thing as pre-law, and then you have to, you know, I didn't know at the time that until like my, second or third year, I'm like, oh, law school is like another thing. Like you have to apply into similar to medical school. You can go pre-medical and take all these, basically a bunch of science classes. With law, it's a mix of, well, philosophy and I guess business classes, but you can essentially build this like portfolio called pre-law, and you work with your counselor and blah blah blah, do all that stuff. And um, I was in a law club for like a day, and then I was like, nope, nope, this is not it. I don't want to do all this. I'm out. So did you, I guess your bachelor college and then your law college, did you knew that that's what you were gonna do?
So undergrad, my major was psychology,
Mm.
and law school, was law. um,
Where did
yeah.
you go for psychology or undergrad?
Why did I do that?
Where did you
Oh,
go?
where? Boston University.
Nice,
Mhm.
nice. And were you in Boston at that time or anywhere near that?
Yeah, I grew up in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
So Boston is about 100 miles away from where I grew up.
Okay. And then for law school?
Law school, I went to Loyola in New Orleans, and
Huh.
yeah, 3 years
Nice.
of living in New Orleans, which was very fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't even know that. When you say Loyola, I'm thinking of this Christian school. I think Chicago or Illinois. I don't know, somewhere.
There's
But
a
I didn't
few
know.
around the country.
Gotcha.
St. Ignatius Loyola was a Jesuit Catholic
Yep.
priest. So there's one
Yep.
in Los Angeles, there's one in Maryland, I believe, there's one in New Orleans, and there's one in Chicago.
Nice. Yeah, St. Ignatius is a high school in Cleveland area that the high school I went to is kind of competes with. There's only several, Catholic high school around town, so it's very prominent. And way back when, it was before college was like super popular. High school was kind of like the thing, and it had that vibe. The building's very old. It's very, um, it's almost like a college in and of itself. Like if you see the campus, and then eventually, when college become more, I guess, popular, then it evolved. But so, why did you pick that school, or was there any reason tied to New Orleans that you like, or how did you, come to that school?
It was basically where I got in.
Okay. So I just finished. Well, I just got up to speed on Better Call Saul,
Mhm.
and previously offline we talked about Breaking Bad, and I love Better Call Saul better, or I like it more than Breaking Bad. And the main character got to the American Samoa Law School or something like that. It was
Yeah, yeah.
fantastic. I loved it. I love that character.
The land
So yeah.
crabs.
Um, what was the mascot for Loyola in New Orleans?
The wolf, I think.
Hmm. Now, climate-wise, it's very different from the Northeast, which I'm gonna lump Massachusetts and then basically everything that's up there past New York, it's a mess. Like I don't know my geography. Do you, but yes, it's very cold. How did you like the climate in New Orleans?
Well, yeah, it took some getting used to. Although It wasn't so bad. I had lived in Washington, D.C. prior to New Orleans, and
Okay.
I found the summers to be ungodly hot there
Hot.
and just
Yeah.
unbearable. New Orleans was technically warmer uh, and perhaps more humid, but for some reason, the attitude of the people there and the culture made it more bearable to deal with the heat. In
Yeah.
Washington, everyone was so uptight and backstabbish and just
Yeah.
a, an asshole basically. And
Yeah. I like.
in New Orleans, everyone was a character. There's bars everywhere. Everyone's just hanging out and
Yeah.
having a good time. And uh,
Man.
so that I guess that makes the difference in terms of heat.
I would. Yeah. I think I would love. Well, I've been in DC to visit friends before, and I would love to live and work there. But I understand what you're shooting at. So, is that like a detractor to? Well, forget forget law school, regular college. I probably wouldn't be able to finish. Was that distracting to you, or you find it okay? You know?
I mean, yeah, I found it okay. During Mardi Gras, which was about a 2 week period, the school just basically shut down, and everyone
Nice.
was roaming around getting drunk. Even the teachers.
Yeah.
My I met my wife there, and she lived in an apartment below the dean of the law school's house, and I went to pick her up during Mardi Gras to go to a parade. There's parades happening all the time, different
Hmm.
ones, and he was coming out his front door, and he was dressed in a Soviet army officer uniform, and we were like, Dean Kleba, would you like a beer? Because we had beers in our
Hmm.
backpacks, and he's like, sure. And
Nice.
so we gave him a beer, and then he goes, would you like something to spice up your beer? And he pulls out this flask of vodka and the dean of the law school poured vodka into my beer.
Nice.
Yeah,
Classic. That's awesome. That sounds like the best law school environment or any college environment there can be.
it was.
But
Yeah, the food is awesome. The music, the culture. Everyone down there is a character. To the people who live in the locals are
yeah,
just
I,
incredible
I don't
people.
think I would have this discipline like you have and actually finish, any school if I had gone there. But that's wonderful. So did you in high school, like, from high school to childhood, were you kind of grew up in the Northeast? Would that be fair to say?
Yes, from birth to college, I lived in the same house pretty much
Mm.
in Avon, Connecticut.
So DC and New Orleans are kind of like, I guess, your young adult or adult time frame. Have
Mhm.
you been anywhere else around the country for
I
like extended like live and work?
After college, I lived in Burlington, Vermont for a summer. My cousin was going
Okay.
to school there. Um, let's see. Then moved to DC and then moved to New Orleans. Oh, and then after New Orleans, my wife and I moved to the Scranton, Pennsylvania area
Mm,
because
the office.
that's where she's from. Yeah. And I clerked for a judge in Scranton, which was a wonderful job.
Nice.
I was writing his legal opinions for him, which was cool. I was basically
Cool.
deciding cases. Um,
Yeah.
and then after Scranton, we moved to Philadelphia, and we lived there for 10 years.
Okay. That's a long time.
Yeah.
So Philly, would you say Philly is kind of like your, another kind of like your hometown kind of feel? Like a
Uh,
big portion of your life or no?
yeah, I mean, I definitely spent a nice chunk there. Although I never really felt like I fit in Philly all that well. I never really made good friends there. I
Mm,
did have acquaintances, but everything was always somewhat distant. Um,
mm-hmm.
Philly's kind of there's like it's kind of a meathead town. Like every guy is
Yeah.
like super masculine and tough guy,
Mm-hmm.
and like leather jacket, goatee wearing kind of tough guy. And then there's also this sort of faux upper crust in Philadelphia. Like it's people who present themselves as like I don't know, like there's a snobbish quality to them, genteel kind of thing, but they never really impressed me all that much. So maybe I just didn't buy into the Philly culture, and that's why I never felt like I fit in there. But
And then after,
it's
yeah,
actually a
go
nice city though. There's good people there, and it's interesting. But
ahead.
just energetically, it wasn't a match for me.
Right. And then after Philly, is there, how do you eventually get here?
So after Philly, I had been working for a law firm in Philly for 9 years, and I hated that job. It was soul crushing kind of cubicle type work.
And this is after the clerkship.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Hmm.
Do you call that clerkship? What do you call that?
Yeah,
Just
clerkship.
do you get paid by the city or county or whatever, right?
Yeah, I think they paid me like 24,000 to do
Okay,
that job. So
gotcha. So, but people usually that's like the stepping stone right out of law school, right? Or no? It's different for everybody.
if you can get a clerkship right out of law school, that's a really good job to get because
Hmm.
you get exposure to a lot of different cases.
Hmm.
You you're full of legal knowledge at that point, like technical legal knowledge, and
Hmm.
you're used to doing a lot of research and writing, and the
Hmm.
clerkship employs all those skills. So, um,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah. So then you spend a little more time in Philly on the on I guess commercial or business side of a law firm, and then after that,
Yeah, the law firm I worked for defended Philip Morris in the tobacco litigation. So,
yeah, nice.
so anyway, yeah. So then they in 2009, with the economy collapsed and I got laid off,
Hmm.
which was probably a good thing in retrospect because I hated the job, and
Hmm.
there were really days when I would be waiting in the train station and thinking like it was thinking that it was a viable option to just jump in front of the train.
Yeah. No, I mean, like when in your episode when you interviewed me, I didn't go there, but there was multiple reasons why I joined the army, and one of it was just I had enough. And so I did have a small part-time job at the time when I signed up, and then soon after I was like, nah, I gotta get out of here. Because to me, and from all that time with the it wasn't the first time I got laid off, but it was the second time. So I kind of understand like all that. I went on that motivation train and personal development stuff, and I knew that movement, like physical movement, like if you take a walk and think, it affects how you actually process information in your mental state as well. So one thing versus another, any kind of movement, physically, geographically, it makes you get out of that mindset. So it was for multiple reasons. But so did you look into moving immediately, or how did you get to where you are now?
Well, so at that point in time, I was licensed to practice law in both Pennsylvania and Connecticut. And I always
Hmm.
liked Connecticut, although there's not a lot of opportunity there. But in terms of the climate, and it just that was always my home.
Hmm.
So we moved to Connecticut to change things up because uh, just things weren't working well in Philly.
Hmm.
And so we lived in Connecticut for about 4 or 5 years, and we were living with my parents, and it was sort of a depressing, almost nightmarish kind of time because I was hope I we moved to Connecticut and I was trying to find a job, and was really difficult. And I did some part-time legal stuff, but it wasn't enough to, support ourselves. My wife didn't have a job at the time either. So it just took a long time to get our feet back on the ground financially. I got a job with an insurance company, which was kind of a contract position, which then led to the full-time position I have with the current insurance company that I work for. So, and then that gave us the financial wherewithal to move. And so we wanted a break from Connecticut. And by that time, my wife and I were both doing jobs that were work from home. So we had the option to move anywhere we wanted to. So we were looking for a place with a lower cost of living and good schools, or good enough schools. And my wife was the one who advocated for North Carolina. I didn't really know much about it. But that was the decision we made. And
Gotcha.
so I want to get back to that point you made about moving. That's definitely been a theme in my life where I would live in a place for a while, and it would become stale, and I would sort of become depressed and fidgety, and then I'd pick up and move. And yes, definitely once I moved, especially during that initial phase, my mood would lift. Life would seem exciting again, full of opportunity. But I think eventually, in every place I've ever relocated to, the depression and anxiety sort of returns after a while. So yes, moving for like an immediate fix to a problem, medium and like from short term to medium term, definitely fixes the problem. But if I have found for myself that if I'm carrying around unsolved problems, they'll eventually surface up again. So moving does help, but in a sense, it's also kind of a running away from a problem. So.
Yeah, definitely. If you don't solve the core issue, then it'll always be there. You just carry the problem to a new, I guess, location or setting. So when you were in college and studying psychology, did you thought about law school, or did you eventually fall into it, or did you ever wanted to be a psychiatrist, or what made you chose psychology?
So I started out college as a history major. I've always been very interested in history. But a lot of people at the time were questioning me, like, what are you going to do with a history major or a history degree? And I never should have listened to those people, but I was very susceptible to the opinions of others for most of my life. And so that did kind of sink in. I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. What am I going to do with it? Now I look back, a history degree would have helped me because I'm, teaching high school history sounds like a great job. I mean, maybe not money-wise, but it sounds very interesting to me. I would love to do that. And there was a period when we were in Connecticut when I tried to get a job at my old high school teaching history. I figured the law degree would translate, but didn't really. It would have been more helpful to have a history degree at that point. Okay. So I switched to psychology. I figured that was more geared towards some real profession. Although I'm not really sure. Because I had never been to therapy at that point, not really. I had never dealt with any of my core issues at that point. So I don't know what I was really thinking when I switched to psychology. But I did that. And then when I graduated from college, nobody is interested in someone with a BA in psychology. In order to be a practicing psychologist, you need to have an advanced degree. And I knew that, and I tried to apply to advanced program, masters, and I don't think I applied for a PhD, but and it's very competitive, and my grades just weren't good enough to get into. So then I was stuck, and I didn't know what to do. And it was a very depressing time, and my father was a lawyer, and so I figured I'd look into that. And
you're literally having the same story as Jimmy McGill, almost not exactly, of course, but there's a lot of that going on. Lots of families, or the other characters in there, where the Hamlin guy, it's the father is the lawyer, and then the son becomes a lawyer. But yeah, keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so I took the LSATs, which is the standardized test to get into law school, and I remember scoring pretty well on the practice exams, but then on the day of the exam itself, I remember being in the middle of it and like having to go to the bathroom super, super bad. And it was like super, super bad stomach cramps, and just, and I didn't want to leave because, it's a timed exam and it's pretty pressured. And so I don't know. I don't want to use that as an excuse, but I didn't score as well as I did on the practice exams. So take from that what you will. And so one of the few schools I got into was the one I got into in New Orleans. It wasn't a very competitive school at the time. I think it's better now.
The LSAT, couldn't you have taken it multiple times, similar to any other exam, SAT or whatever, and choose the best score to send to the schools?
Yeah. So okay, I'm thinking back at the time I took it. And I submitted applications to law schools and got rejected from almost every single one except for Loyola. There might have been another one that accepted me. Loyola kind of waitlisted me, I think, was the original. And so I was like, what the hell do I do with my life now? And at that time, my sister and brother-in-law were in D.C. and they invited me to, because I had been living in Connecticut at that time, at my parents' house. I was driving a flower delivery truck, and not able to make enough money to live out on my own, and so and it was a humiliating experience. So my sister and brother-in-law invited me to move down to D.C. and look for work down there. And so that's what I did. And then when I was living in D.C., I got a job working for this organization called the White House Conference on Travel and Tourism. And so that was like really my first real kind of office type job.
Did you not try to, did you not want to take the LSAT again? That was my point.
Yeah. So I was actually trying to answer that question, but I got sidetracked. So I guess I sort of put the idea of going to law school on hold. So I was working in D.C. and then Loyola said, "Hey, do you want to come to school here?" And so I figured, my job with the White House Conference on Travel and Tourism is going to end soon, and that law school will start pretty much a few months after that. So that's what I did. It was just an opportunity that was open to me, and I went.
Yeah.
Went for it.
So the LSAT, isn't it like multiple days or just one session, one time kind of thing? I don't know much about it. I did look into it around the time when I was leaving the Army, and looking into like new career when I was working the temp job here in North Carolina. But yeah, didn't look into it much further. I bought the LSAT study book, whatever, and literally the first page of it said, "This is the best LSAT, blah 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 blah," and I'm like, shut up, you don't know how to prove that. It's like I closed the book and never opened it again. I'm like, that's it. I'm not doing this. This is gonna piss me off all like the rest of the time. It's gonna piss me off, and I had this notion of lawyer and the legal thing, and it didn't help in business school. We did have to take a business law class, and this lawyer is like, he was like a practicing attorney, but also teach a class at college kind of thing. And of course, he started the class like this. American is the best constitution. I'm like, oh my god, I hate it. They're like, shut up, man. Like, they just have all these like, pompous feel vibe to it. I'm like, this is confirming everything I know from movies and TV shows. And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna have fun with this. I'll be pissed all the time, and no, thank you. So eventually I did, pass the class, but the LSAT book, I never opened it again. So I was like, I'm done. I'm just gonna do something else. But yeah, was it like you sit there for 3-4 hours, one session period, kind of thing?
Yeah, the LSAT was one day, as I recall, and I think it was around 3 hours, but I don't specifically remember. And the bar was 2 days. The bar exam.
Gotcha. Nice.
For
So
Pennsylvania.
when you were at Loyola or going to law, did you previously thought about like family law or some kind of corporate law or something like that, or did you have a notion of what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I was interested in criminal law,
Mm.
and I actually applied to be a JAG Corps officer in the Navy.
Mm.
And I was really, really wanted to get that job. I was super excited.
Yeah.
But I had, let's see, I had a pretty strong, well, pretty severe, well, I don't know if severe is the right word, but I had an issue with anxiety when I was in law school. And I felt like my throat was closing up on me, and I thought it was a physical issue. And so I went to all these doctors, and they kept telling me that it was psychological, but I wouldn't believe them. And then finally I did go see a psychiatrist. And after talking with him, and I think he put me on antidepressants, the problem resolved itself. So when I applied to the JAG Corps, one of the questions on the medical questionnaire was, have you ever had anxiety issues? And I like a fool, was honest.
Yeah.
And
people lie so much on those things, just so you know. I'm not sure you know that. But yeah.
Until that point, the recruiters really liked me. They were telling me I was a really strong candidate, and I was like almost a shoo-in, and then that happened, and boy, yeah.
So what else besides the JAG Corps did you were thinking of? And then to the same tune of the question, right? Like beside your dad, was there any kind of like TV show or movie character that you're like, oh man, that's exciting? Like, so for me, watching Tom Cruise in what is that movie? Yes, A Few Good Men. I was like, damn, okay, I want to be a lawyer too, but I was like, nah, I'm cool. But I love that. I love those, I guess, world, because Aaron Sorkin is a really good writer, and he does a lot of legal writing because it gives ground for characters to go on rants or like epic monologues, like 5 minutes monologue.
Yeah.
And Boston Legal, The Practice, The West Wing, like I love all that stuff because it's very nitty gritty, and the characters are very smart. They're very like super smart, and they know everything, and everything is in their brain, and I love that stuff. And so I was like, that's what I was thinking, but that's I'm pretty sure that's not the reality. So besides your dad, were there any kind of like influence that were like, oh, that's my that's what I want to do kind of thing?
No, really, my main strategy or goal
Mm-hmm.
was to have something to say when somebody said, "What do you do for a living?" I didn't want, for most of my life, I feared that question
Mm,
and felt humiliated when I actually answered it.
mm,
And yeah, you're right to
yeah.
go. And I have that same sort of reaction to my, well, I'm also compassionate to my former self, but yeah, I mean, for most of my life, I think my main motivation was just not to be humiliated, and and
So did you pick like a category of law? Or did you say I'm a criminal lawyer? Is that what you wanted to
well,
answer that question with?
I was interested in that, and as a JAG Corps officer, you're dealing primarily with criminal law.
Mm-hmm.
But right around the time that my wife and I graduated from law school, our initial plan was to stay in New Orleans, and if we had done that, I probably would have applied to the DA's office, but my wife's mother died like right around that time,
Mm-hmm.
and she's an only child, and so we moved to. We had the option to move to Scranton,
Mm-hmm.
where her father lived, and he was a reporter for the Scranton Times and covered the courthouse, so he knew all the
Wow.
judges.
Cool.
And yeah, and so he was able to get me the clerkship position with a judge, and
Nice.
so I could stay in New Orleans and be unclear as to what I would be doing,
Mm-hmm.
or we could move to Scranton and I would be guaranteed a job. And in
Mm.
my brain that wanted to avoid humiliation at all costs, the guaranteed jobs, I couldn't pass that up. So
Yeah,
that's
no, that makes that makes economic sense as well. But yeah, like for any lay person or anyone that's, just like me, I'm interested in a law only in a sense of like cinema and TV shows, right? Like that's all I know, Law and Order, all that stuff. In a clerkship, is it like, a yearly kind of internship kind of job, or is it like you can be a clerk forever if you wanted to? Like how does that work
it.
mechanically?
It all depends on the judge.
Mm,
So the judge I worked for actually asked me to stay another year because he liked my work. That was
mm,
a great. Can we stay for a while on this job because that was a
yeah,
bright spot in my legal career.
yeah.
Um, he basically like the office was just the judge, the tip staff, tip staff is like a bailiff, I guess, in other courtrooms. But in Pennsylvania, for some reason, they call it the tip staff. And I think because in older time periods, the tip staff held a staff and would
Mm.
poke people if they fell asleep in the courtroom. But he's basically like the judge's. He maintains
Court
order.
officer,
Yeah,
bailiff
maintains
guy.
order
Yeah,
in the courtroom, but also does a lot of stuff. I don't know, administrative stuff,
yeah.
whatever the judge wants him to do. The judge
Gotcha.
also has a secretary, and then he has a clerk. And the clerkship. Again, it really depends on the judge how he wants to dole out the work. But when I arrived this judge that I worked for was a real like tough guy. He was awesome,
Hmm.
though. I loved him, but he wants to. He swore all the time. He chewed gum
Nice.
behind the bench. He
Well, you're not supposed to chew gum.
well, I
You're
mean,
supposed to sit there like with full attention all the time or
if you're a
something.
judge, you can do whatever you want. But
Right.
in my mind, it seemed unjudgely. But then
Mm.
when I saw him do it, I was like, oh, okay, that works. But so I arrived in his office. He didn't really know me. He
Hmm.
knew my father-in-law and hired me
Based on
because
that.
yeah. And so he basically handed me some files of some cases that were coming before his court. He's like, see what you can do with this. And
Hmm.
basically, my job was there would be hearings before the judge. not
Mm-hmm.
not trials, but I mean there
Right.
were trials, but my work didn't really involve that so much. But let's say there was a summary judgment argument before the judge.
Mm-hmm.
So both sides, the plaintiff and the defendant would submit their briefs, which are, depending on how complicated the issue is, it could be like a 2-page document, it could be like a 30-page document, but basically outlining their argument,
Mm-hmm.
talking about the facts of the case, then making their argument, and then like applying the law to the facts and citing legal cases and to back up their arguments and all that. And so basically, and they would have an oral argument before the judge, but really the judge would be like, okay, let me read your briefs and I'll make my decision.
Right.
So he would give those briefs to me, and I'd be the one reading them. And so basically, I'd read each brief. I'd if they both agreed on the facts, then that was then I didn't really need to deal with that. But if there was a discrepancy as to the facts, then I'd have to figure out like which made more logical sense, or I'd just say, well, this part of the fact pattern is in dispute, and so I'm not going to deal with that. But then I'd read the cases I'd read their legal arguments and the cases that they used to back up those arguments. So I actually have to read the cases that they would cite and see if they actually applied to the situation at hand. And a lot of times the cases had nothing, had no like
no bearing.
Yeah, some lawyers would hand in just like shitty briefs, and I guess under the assumption that nobody would ever read it. And that's the only thing I could. So anyway, so then I'd have to. So based on, the facts, their arguments, and how the case law actually applied to those facts, and I'd say, okay, this guy's right, this guy's wrong, and I'd write an opinion, which could be like depending on how complicated the issue was, like a 2-page document or a 20 or 30-page document, and I'd just be like, okay, and I'd just methodically go through, he argued this, the law says this, so therefore this person is correct, and some of the analysis, got pretty involved. I had to go through like a multi-step process, but eventually, but I would be deciding who won or who lost that particular hearing, and then I'd give my the opinion I drafted to the judge, and the judge would read it, and more times than not, he would sign it without even changing anything in the document. I loved that job. I loved the research. I loved the writing. I loved the scholarly aspect to it. I loved the sort of power that was invested in it. I loved like seeing the backside of how the judicial system actually works, and real problems are really solved. I loved all that.
Now, did you do most judges have only one clerk, or how does that work? Can he have 2 or 3, or how does that work?
Well, in the courthouse where I worked, which is a state trial level courthouse in Pennsylvania, each judge had only one clerk.
Okay.
But on the federal level, there was a federal courthouse right across the street, and I believe and it was a federal district level court, so trial level court. I believe each judge had 2 or 3 clerks over there. On the appellate level, I imagine there's multiple clerks, and certainly the Supreme Court level as well.
Yeah, the clerk or the judge that you clerked for, was he like a family judge, or what is again like the office, and what do they deal with? I mean, I guess they deal with everything that comes in, but what is the defense attorney's judge? I don't understand what was like the because I know there's civil, and then there's criminal, which is the division with the law, but that doesn't mean the judge's job is different every day. I mean, he does the same thing every day.
So,
right?
Okay, in Scranton, I mean this will differ by jurisdiction, but
Gotcha.
in at Scranton was the county seat of, which is like the capital of the county of
Hmm.
Lackawanna County in Pennsylvania. So each county has its own courthouse or trial level court, and in Lackawanna County, the trial level judge could hear both criminal and civil cases.
Hmm.
So he could be having a murder trial one day, and
Mm.
like somebody suing, a
Hmm.
drugstore the next day. So
Gotcha. Cool.
all
So you
different
were
kinds of
exposed to
cases.
all kind of crazy stories or cases or whatever,
Yeah, yeah,
and it can range from anything to anything.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So I
But
I mean, other
can
than
I
TV shows.
just by
Yeah. Go ahead.
contrast? By contrast, in Philadelphia and in New Orleans, they did separate the criminal and civil courts. So
Mm.
there would be judges that just handled criminal cases, and there would be judges that just handled civil cases. But
Yeah.
it would just depend on the jurisdiction you were in, whether a judge would have a limited jurisdiction or not.
Yeah. That makes. I guess. Yeah. America is not like the simplest country to deal with regards to the legal system because and I only know from passing by or layman knowledge from watching so much legal TV show that pretty much at the Supreme Court level and then at the state level they United States replicate everything down from a scale style. So federal, and then after that it's the state, and we replicate or mirror each of the system. So the governor is basically the president of the state,
Mm-hmm.
and we have houses on both sides also on the state level. Um, it's basically a replicate of all the federal system, and so like from watching TV show and when they tried to push at some point my understanding stopped because I'm like, this is so complicated. so so when you're like blah blah attorney, I'm like, all right, whatever. It's like it doesn't mean much to me. When you with this understanding and this background, when you watch something, do you see a lot of errors or do you enjoy, like for me, I enjoy military movies to only a certain extent
Mm.
because after that I start nitpicking at like I would notice things. I'm like, that's not how you carry that, or that's not how you wear that, or I'm like, this movie, I can't watch this movie. I gotta stop because I'm not enjoying the storyline anymore. I'm nitpicking at certain things, right? But some movies get it really good, and then I would enjoy that. So for you, with all this background, because you did it for how long? A year or
The clerkship,
this? Hmm.
the clerkship was just a year. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that understanding, I think even with a year, you get a lot of exposure to all the different legal, I guess, landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find certain TV shows more enjoyable than other? Any movies that are like, that's not how it works. This is BS.
Yeah.
Like you have to stop watching, kind of thing.
The biggest thing that doesn't match up with dramatic portrayals of the legal system is the time scale,
Mm.
because you could have an argument before a court on a specific issue,
Hmm.
and then the judge would be like, okay, let me read your materials and I'll render my decision. That decision could be the next month,
Hmm.
and that's just one decision in one part of the lawsuit. Let's say,
Mm.
from an actual injury or loss or whatever to the time that you actually have a trial could be years.
Hmm.
I mean, the legal process takes a lot of time, and anytime there's one specific, and they're arguing each little point, in the lawsuit, and each little argument takes a long time to actually get to the hearing because there's all the research and stuff that takes place before that, and then
Hmm.
the judge has to make his decision, and the judge is has that's not the only case before the judge. The judge probably has hundreds of cases. So
Right.
that case needs to get in line behind the other ones that have been argued. And so
Right.
it just takes forever. Whereas if you watch an episode of Law and Order, it's looking like they're having hearings like back to back after day, and somebody commits a crime on day one, and it's
Yeah.
the trial happens, a week or two later. No, it doesn't work that way. It's
Yeah, it takes
years
a
and
long
years
time.
and years. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you enjoy certain shows or certain, things stand out? Like, I guess, so I have a friend who majored in philosophy, and he actually did apply to law school somewhere and got accepted. And now I guess I get the connection more because at the time I guess I was still young and didn't know anything and didn't really connect with me that philosophy with the reasoning and the way they write, I guess essays or dissertations it very very closely related to the law and this clerkship of your how you or even judges like that's what their job is to make a decision based on logic really and arguments.
Yeah.
Do you see the connection between that and is that really necessary or let's say I'm I don't know a marketing student and I'll be just fine.
Oh,
Does it take a certain career path like philosophy major, psychology major, it doesn't matter before going to law school.
it doesn't matter. You just have to be able to think clearly and to recognize patterns, I guess. Because the way the law works is, there'll be a certain factual situation, and then you'll make a legal argument based on factual situations that were similar to that one. You'll say the law applies because these two situations are similar and a court ruled this way in that particular situation. So, and then the other side would say, well, no, that fact pattern doesn't match this one because of this reason and that reason. Yeah. So, it's a lot of analogies. It's a lot of
Reasoning.
Yeah. So
cool. So like, do you, the range or the time that you had with this clerkship and the judge, do you think that is unique because maybe this judge made it better? Like, let's say, somebody else in some other county across the country had a clerkship and it would be the worst, terrible, most, uninteresting, crazy, stressful, boring job they might have. Does this basically it's a small team, right? It's you and this judge that is doing all this. So I imagine it has an impact. Do you think that because of this specific judge that's why you enjoy it so much, or it's more like just the nature of the job that you like it so much?
Yeah, no, I was very fortunate to end up with this judge and for him to give me so much latitude to do the job and yeah, that was great.
Like, did you meet other clerks?
Yeah.
And like hang out because I imagine it's a building and then there's multiple judges working in this building. I imagine there's like other clerks and you guys complain and whine about different judges afterwards. Is that kind of kind of true? Like I mean, there's never a TV show that covered this side of the law, so I don't really understand what's going on there. But I imagine that's the case.
So yeah, I mean, I imagine this differs wildly depending on what kind of courthouse you're working in. But in my case, there was one room where all the clerks for all the different judges sat and did their work. And
oh, okay.
Yeah, and it was kind of a fun situation.
Is that normal? That sounds. I imagine it's like you go into this office and then the secretary will be there, and then you go into another office and it'll be the judge if you have an appointment with him, and somewhere along the line you have an office for you. But I guess in this courthouse it's different. All the clerks sit around next to each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think. In other courthouses it could have been just how you described, but in this particular one, there was a clerk room, and that's where we all went.
Cool. Do you, in this year that you did it, were there, things that were really tough, or did you enjoy more because it was so, like most law firms have a law library or whatever, because you have to reference a case.
Yeah.
did you, what did you enjoy most in regards to studying on, maybe you don't have to mention the case by name, but like, a law that you never knew about, or a case that's so unique that, you're never gonna forget it, kind of thing. Um, what was the most enjoyable experience for you?
It was more just being able. So I'll give you an example. There was one case that I was working on, and it was sort of complicated because it dealt with like, there was someone was assessed a tapping fee to connect their house to a sewer line that had been put in somewhere, and they were arguing that they shouldn't have to pay that. And it was complicated because there were. I'm trying to remember. My memory is not very clear, but the point is that I was reading all these cases that dealt with this subject, and it got very technical, and I didn't really understand it when I read the case, the one case in particular, and so I just reread it, and I still didn't understand it, but I felt like I understood it a little bit better, and then I reread it again, and then I understood it better, and then so I got to this understanding that I can understand anything if I just keep working at it over and over and over and over again. And that was like a watershed moment to me. It's like, because before I thought like, if I don't understand it, then I can just, I'm incapable of doing it, but that wasn't an option in this situation. The judge was expecting me to hand him something. So I just kept doing it, and so any complicated subject that I mean, I don't know about tapping fees or sewer lines or all the technical jargon, the engineering jargon and all that. And that's every case has its own unique fact pattern and its own expertise required to understand it. And lawyers deal with becoming experts in really specific subjects, that they don't have expertise in. So they're like experts at becoming experts at things, and
you have to read up and learn super fast.
And you have to have the ability to and that's a skill that you learn. Like, to be able to read something that you're not interested in is a skill.
God.
Is a skill.
Yeah, I guess I admire that because I, prior to joining this little law club or whatever they want to call themselves, and I was in it for maybe like I said, a day or a week. They had a fake case, right? A fake trial, a fake everything, and we went to the discovery, and this kid showed up with this binder completely laminated with like the paper inserted into this plastic sheet, and it was all labeled. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, you had to do that? I didn't know. Like, nobody tell me, right? And he was all ready to go, and I was like, I don't understand. Like, are we, like, you're just supposed to have fun in this little law club? Like, what? Like, that's, and all these people are super, super wannabe lawyers type, and I was like, I was just here to like hang out and like learn. Like, I didn't know you guys are taking this so seriously, but have. From that little experience, I learned that almost half, by the time it comes to the trial, the judge, the two different attorneys, everybody is on the same page. You're supposed to. And really, it's almost like a presentation. It's like a play, like an act, because everybody knows what's going on. All the paperwork's been done, all the briefs. So really, you don't really do that much except presenting information that you already know to like, let's say, a jury or audience of the court, because the two lawyers and the judge are already, on the same page, like on everything.
Not necessarily, but they're on the same page about the areas that they're not on the same page about.
Okay. So like to that end, like my point is like all the writing that you do, all this stuff, and the judges, all the reading, it seems like a lot of that is on human, understanding and appreciation. And like you said, you had to study and study and read it and read it. What happens when a clerk is like, you know, late? Like if you had a deadline, you can't meet it, or if you can't do your job, like what happens? Can you go to another clerk and ask for help? How does that work? How do you ask for help?
Um, that's a good question. I mean, you could go to the judge and just say, "Look,
Mm,
I'm having a hard time with this. Here's what I got so far, and you
gotcha.
know, um,
Give
what
me another
what?
case.
Well, no. Just like what do you recommend I do?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And were you, did you have to do that, or were you like an excellent clerk and, 95% of the time you're good to go?
I would say, yeah, 95% of the time I could handle things on my own. And the judge would read what I wrote, and there were a couple times where he was like, no, I don't agree with this. Take it
Mm.
back, and I want it to go this way. So
Mm.
rewrite it so it goes that
Gotcha.
way. But most of the time he would just sign off on what I wrote
Do
after
you
reading
think,
it.
yeah, do you think that before law school, obviously, like you had to read a lot, and then this clerkship, the experience that you gained from it, um, between both of those time frame, and then like now, of course, going into like a movie or like a TV show, do you still enjoy it the same way a normal person would enjoy it, like before law school, or do you nitpick?
I feel like I enjoy it more actually because
Mm.
I feel like I appreciate the nuance of the. I mean, I think most TV shows and certainly Law and Order, and although I haven't seen Law and Order in a long time.
Have
Uh,
you seen Boston Legal?
yeah, I remember watching that. Um, I think they usually do a pretty good job in terms of courtroom stuff. All the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that happens outside the courtroom, which is the boring stuff, they
Mm.
don't really show, and probably with good reason because it wouldn't make a
Yeah,
good
it's
TV show.
boring.
Yeah. So,
So you enjoyed the same law school, and of course the clerkship, and your experience didn't like ruin anything for you.
no. I don't think so.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, because definitely the army definitely ruined certain things for me, and I can never watch. Um, like if it's a normal, fighting aliens movie, that's fine. But if it's anything like, you know, army related, I'm like, oh, here we go, and let's see what mistakes I'm gonna spot. And it's just it sucks because now I can never, just watch the movie and enjoy it like the way I was before.
Hmm.
I'll always look for that thing moving forward, um, which is why certain movies I really enjoy when they get it right.
Hmm.
Um, and I wonder, the same thing as medical doctors or lawyers when they see certain things, they're like, "Ugh, this stupid show. They always get this wrong," kind of thing. But I guess it doesn't happen for you, so that's
Um,
good.
I mean, yeah, I mean, sometimes they'll get things wrong, but I
you
guess that
don't you
doesn't
don't
bother me all that
hone in
much.
on
I
it.
don't know why.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's good. No, that's good. So do you um, you know, if there is like an evolved version of this clerkship, like what would that be for you? Did you work in like the DA's attorney's office, or what does that look like? Like if you like the clerk, the work that you do in the clerkship,
Yeah.
where do you go from there typically?
Well, you can work for you could work for a federal judge. You could work on the appellate level. You could work on the Supreme Court level too.
What is all the different levels? Can you like
Sure.
Supreme Court is like the top, and then what happens after that?
Okay. Well, there's two parallel systems going on at the same time. There's the federal
See that?
system and the state system.
That
So,
helps. I
okay.
didn't know that.
So there's the federal Supreme Court level.
Hmm.
Then there's the federal appellate level. So there's I forget how many different circuits there are in the United States. Something like 12 or 13, maybe. The United States is divided up into 13 different regions, and there's an appellate court, federal appellate court that presides over that particular circuit.
Hmm.
And then there are the district level courts, which are where the courts where the trials happen, and those are all over, usually in bigger cities.
Okay.
So let's say you filed suit in a federal court, and so okay. We can
where would a case go from federal versus state? Like where,
Okay. Okay.
if you're attorney, where would you advise your client to go, one versus the other, and
Okay.
why?
Okay. Well, in order to get into federal court, the federal court needs to have jurisdiction over the matter that is at issue. And there's two ways that a federal court can have jurisdiction. One is called subject matter jurisdiction, which is so the case has to involve some sort of federal statute or federal law.
Mm-hmm.
So if that is at issue, then you can file suit in a federal court. The other way a federal court can have jurisdiction is if there's diversity of parties and the amount in controversy is over, I believe it's $75,000. So diversity of parties means one party is from one state and another party is from a different state.
Yep. Multi-state.
Yeah.
Cool.
Everything else falls under the jurisdiction of whatever state.
Yep.
So most criminal law is actually state
state-based.
State has jurisdiction. There are some federal crimes like racketeering and other things, or like mail fraud, or
I learned a lot from watching Better Call Saul. I learned a lot from watching all the criminal shows that I enjoy, and I'm like, oh, okay, I don't want to do that in that state.
Yeah,
I want to do it in this other
evasion,
state.
Stuff like that.
Gotcha. The different level, or like appellate versus supreme. Is there anything else?
So let's say there's a trial in a district level court, and you lose.
Mm-hmm.
You can appeal. You can file an appeal to the appellate level court, and the appellate level court has to agree to hear your case. It can say, no, I'm not going to hear that. And if they deny us, on the Supreme Court level, it's called denying certiorari. I think on the appellate level, it's just refusal to hear or something like that. But if the appellate level court refuses to hear it, then whatever happened on the district level stands. Now you could, if an appellate court refuses to hear your case, you can appeal to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court could also say, no, we refuse to hear it, and then it would go back to the district level court. Now at the appellate level, so in a district court, federal district court, that's where the trial is. So you would have a jury, unless it was a bench trial, but both sides would present their framing of the facts. They would present evidence. They would make their arguments and all that. The appellate level it's not a trier of fact. It's just a trier of law. So the district level tries both facts and law. So it determines how the facts actually have transpired and how the law applies to those facts. At the appellate level, you can only argue law. You can only say the district court made an error in their application of the law to these facts because of this reason. And the appellate court could say, yeah, you're right, they made an error and we reversed them. Or they could say, no, you're wrong. We affirm what they said. And the reason for that is because in a district court, you're presenting the evidence, you're making your arguments. So the jury was in a position to evaluate that. The appellate level is just it's just a panel of judges that sit behind a bench like at the Supreme Court.
There's no jury on appellate level.
No, it's just judges. And they're not in a position to evaluate the facts, hear the testimony of the witnesses, all that.
All that stuff. Okay.
Yeah. And same with the Supreme Court. They don't try facts. It's just all law.
So obviously, yeah, go ahead. So that's it, right? Like district, appellate, supreme?
Yep.
And then you were about to say something before.
No, just go ahead.
Yeah, my question was, obviously there are more laws now than, let's say, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, right? Like we evolved to have more laws. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's only sensible, right?
Yeah.
So um or logical. So like when have a situation, let's say we don't have that law, or the law we are applying don't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
um you know I guess at each stage, can you make that argument? Is that viable, or that's
Yes.
very, very unlikely? Like most lawyers don't even bother going against the current existing laws.
So there's two types of law in our legal system. There's statutory law, which is
Mm.
are laws that are written, that are passed by a legislative body and are written down in let's if Congress passes a law, then that becomes a written statutory law, right?
Right.
The other kind of law is case law. So if a case is decided, let's say, I'm just trying to think of something. I don't know. Let's say one guy sues another person, and the court decides in favor of the first guy. That case law becomes law. That the opinion of that court is law, and someone else down the line can say, all right, the fact pattern in that case matches the fact pattern in our current case, so that law, the way they decided, has to apply to our situation.
Does a judge have to listen to the case law
If
or follow?
If the case law is from a court that is on the same level, then no. If the case law
Gotcha.
is from an appellate court
Gotcha.
that is within his, and he's in that circuit, then yes, it is binding.
Cool.
So
other circuits. Go ahead. Yeah.
So that's the difference between binding law and law. There's a term for it that's slipping my mind, but it's basically law that can influence your decision but is not binding, and then there's law that you do have to follow.
I assume a lot of that is not, the case law is numerous out there, and I guess it's the job of a judge to continually educate himself, and I guess maintain himself. So I don't know if you know this, but in the medical profession, and I forgot what I was reading, but it was basically saying that, I think it's Freakonomics related. It was like a research or something. They were looking into it. We used to value older doctors because we think experience matters, and which is true. Like experience definitely matters, and your skill set and how you evaluate an injury, for example, or your understanding of like how cancer usually work from all the cases you ever did. So we value that, but now, let's say within the recent memory, newer medical understanding keeps evolving. So people like medical doctors that graduate more recently are actually better at older doctors because they understand newer application of medicine, right? And so it's like you want a younger doctor because they know what's going on more, because older doctors are like, outdated information is not accurate. So there's that conflict, not conflict per se, but that's where you kind of want to listen to multiple doctors and you want to evaluate things depending on what you're suffering from. With regards to the law, do you think that older judges, older lawyers are more, is there like a thing where wisdom matters, or is it because we evolve as a society, so law should evolve with us, versus using all these outdated notion, insane, non-applicable laws that are just from centuries ago, where the internet wasn't there. So so that's the problem I have, right? Like when I watch movies or think about things and I apply this layman perspective, and I think, my God, there are people that are literally dinosaurs that were have no idea how the internet works, making decisions on stuff that have no idea how it actually works. And God forbid, I have no idea how they do this, and I'm like, oh, this scaring me, or to understand that I work in the tech field, and I know I'm underwhelmed, and I have no technical knowledge of something works, and I would have to go research or understand that. And I always wonder, how do judges and essentially, like, people, you think, like, we have this notion of, the supreme justices, and I'm like, dude, these are just people. They're gonna make mistakes.
Mhm.
So I'm so I'm a big fan of, like, either make it bigger, like 13, 15 judges versus 9, and they're forever. Where do you how do you feel about that? Like, do you think the medical industry approach to, always educating yourself works? Because I know lawyers do that. They have a renewal education, but we're evolving very, very fast, and these some of these laws don't apply. So how do you feel about certain things like that?
Okay, so I think the legal profession or the judicial system is a lot different than the medical
Medical,
profession in that regard.
yeah.
Because when you have an argument before a court, both sides it's up to the plaintiff and the defendant to come up with the best possible argument for their position possible. And they do that, and they argue it orally, and they also write a brief that makes their best argument and supports it with case law. So it's up to them to come up with that argument, and then the court considers those arguments. So presumably the judge has a clerk or two underneath them, and they go through those briefs and read all the cases that both sides submit. And from that position, a decision is made. Who has the better argument? So I think the system works well because it's the job of the lawyer representing the party to come up with the best argument possible.
Gotcha. So it's always updated, and
Yeah.
if you goofed up on something, it's your problem, because I'm going to judge it based on that.
I mean, well, when I was a clerk, not only did I read both sides' arguments, but I also did independent research to, because sometimes they would proffer, bullshit positions, and it was good to know what the, from an objective standpoint, what the law
should be
yeah.
or should work. Yeah. Cool. That's good. That's good to know. So, like, other than clerks who are coming out of, I guess, law school, are there, like, clerks that stay in there for a long time and just hang out and be a clerk? I imagine, like, you want to do something else most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on the judge. Sometimes a clerk or a judge and a clerk are really have a close personal relationship, and the judge agrees to it's up to the judge. The judge basically is given a budget to work with to run his courtroom, and he has a certain amount of money to hire staff, and it's up to him or her to decide who they want to hire.
Nice. Do you, if you had to change, like, let's say you get to time travel, do you, would you change anything? Would you go another route, or do you like some, insurance claims or discovery work? Like, what would you, if you, time wasn't a factor, or, and other limits like money or whatever, what would you do? What would be your perfect kind of scenario?
That's a good question. I mean, right now, I feel like I have a great deal of understanding in terms of, I think I would make a good psychotherapist, but I don't have the educational background. And when I graduated college with a BA in psychology, I don't think I would have made a very good psychotherapist, because I didn't really explore my own psychology prior to that. But I think I've had a lot of experience since then that has given me incredible insight into that world, and incredible compassion for people who dealt with issues that
Yeah.
I've dealt with. So I think that would be great.
Yeah.
Law, probably I'm not the best fit for law, although I loved the clerkship. I love the research and writing aspect of it. I think my mind is more creative, and the legal profession isn't. I mean, you can be creative in certain situations, but like if you work in a law firm,
They don't want
creativity,
creative people.
not
Yeah.
really. I mean, well, they don't value it. It's not what they want. People who can bill hour after hour after hour,
Yeah. Yeah.
doing
Totally.
boring stuff. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know.
Do
I mean,
you?
it got me. I ended up. I like who I am right now,
Hmm.
and I don't think I would have become this person had I not had the experiences I had. Career-wise, I probably didn't make all the best choices. But again, I am where I am now.
Is there another facet of the law that you really like besides criminal, or like a situation like the clerkship where it exposes you to multiple things? What else in
What
the commercial or
Yeah,
law firm kind of style would there be
what I would
for
really
that?
like to be, um, in terms of a lawyer, is a person who, like a solo practitioner
Hmm.
who can handle pretty much any case that walks in his door, and
Mm.
would, someone has a problem, I could help them with that particular problem. Um,
Yeah.
it Every legal job I've had, outside of the clerkship, was so far removed from actual problems. Like I was doing
Mm.
work that was so far removed from actual people and actual problems that it didn't feel like I was doing anything at all. I was just
Yeah.
making money for the law firm I was working for, or even in
Yeah.
my insurance position, um, I don't deal with actual people.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
gotcha.
yeah,
So you would like like Better Call Saul. That would be
yeah,
fantastic for you.
yes, yeah.
other than other than that character, have you come across any kind of any other environment or show that you think that, man, people should really, or kids that think about law school should really check this out, because this would be the most true or rewarding or inspiring thing people should watch. Is there anything like that for you?
Well, it's not legal oriented, but it it touches on the nightmare of working in an office.
Hmm.
Have you seen the movie Office Space?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
It's like a big deal. Yeah, Office Space is like half the reason I didn't go the way I went, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm gonna switch and do something else. But yeah, is that? Do you think that that is typical reality of a legal person?
if you go to work for a big law firm, they're all about billable hours. They're all, you know,
Hmm.
and they give the most boring work to the new people
Yep.
in the door. And you're expected to bill. Like the law firm I work for in Philadelphia, I forget how many hours they wanted me to, like it was something, I don't know. I want to say like 20,000 a year, but I don't even know.
Mm.
That can't be right. I don't know. It was some ungodly amount of hours, and they said, okay, you can have 2 weeks paid vacation per year, but you still had to make the same billable hours per year.
Right.
So they could say I have 365 days of paid
Hmm.
vacation, and it would mean the same thing.
Right. But was it the Office, the point of it was just so unbearably, uninteresting that the characters kind of, they all go crazy, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's very funny. But I imagine law work is typing up essays. Is that like, what do you mechanically actually do other than researching, like a repeatable, boring job would be? I don't understand that world. So would you
Yeah.
repeatedly typing up an essay that's the same? Like, how does that work?
So the document review type work that I described to you earlier. Typically for, newer associates would do that type of work.
Okay.
Yeah, there would be some, as you move up the chain, there would be some work that requires more thought, writing brief writing, motion writing, that sort of stuff. Eventually you get into the courtroom and, but most of it's sitting behind a desk and
Yeah.
being bored out of your mind.
Wow. Sounds like accounting, because I
Dealing
switched
with,
major.
and dealing with horrible people as well.
Horrible people.
People you hate on a daily basis.
Yeah, I switched majors 2-3 times, but accounting was. I think I walked through an accounting firm once in college, it's like a tour or something. I was like, this is not what I wanted to do. And I was like, man, this is what they do forever. Like, no, thank you. Even if you get paid really well, I'm gonna go pursue something else. So, awesome. That really helps. Although I enjoy watching certain TV show, I know the reality is much different, and I think I love hustlers like Better Call Saul, and they make it way more interesting and fun, but that's not highly practical almost all the time. It's not, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, the life of a solo practitioner is difficult because you never know when the money is going to come in. If you have an established practice, then it's a little bit more stable. But you could have 1 month where you make $50,000, from a case, and then make nothing the next 2 months, or whatever. So,
yeah.
So that's the trade-off. It's way more interesting, but it's not as stable as working for a big law firm where you get a paycheck.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Is there anything else you want to share with us? Your little interview episode?
I mean, we didn't.
You're working on a book, aren't you? Did you want to talk about that?
I mean, we could. We're already an hour and a half, so I don't know if we want to.
Yeah, maybe for the second follow up, but other than the legal industry and law, is there perhaps something almost unrelated, but you mentioned psychology. Is there anything else or anything specific in that you like more than legal?
Creative work. I like. I like writing. I like public speaking. I like. There's a whole other area we can explore there, but I think it's probably enough. Fantastic. For today. Yeah.
Cool. Closing thoughts for our listeners?
Do you have closing thoughts?
No, I just want to say thank you for sharing. Sometimes, one-on-one is very different because you're just, sharing with a buddy and chatting and whatnot. So it's not a big deal. But, we don't know who our listeners are. They be terrible, crazy people or very nice people. We hope that they're nice people. But, it's always. Sharing is difficult. Being vulnerable is difficult. So I appreciate it, and thanks for that. And I have a tendency to interrupt, so I appreciate your patience with me. But I think it's good. Thank you for doing this, and maybe we'll have a follow up where we examine certain things like compare clerk work to XYZ TV show and then talk about it in depth, stuff like that. So like for me. Like I asked the question, but for me, Black Hawk Down is always the most, like, people say, what is it like? I say, go watch Black Hawk Down. That's as good as it gets and as accurate as it gets in regards to infantry and army and all that jazz. Because things go crazy wrong and everybody freaks out, and that's exactly how it is. But, whereas like an epic super, and the opposite spectrum is Arnold Schwarzenegger did a movie in the 80s. I forgot what it's called now. I want to say Commando. Yeah, that's it. That's the absolute wrong, like, pure entertainment. Like, yes, go watch Commando if you want to see what is it not. Like, That's exactly what it is. Like it's completely not that. But yeah, one day we'll get to you and your legal, and maybe you can do a comparison. But thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'd also like to talk about spiritual stuff, but
Yeah, we
we
can do
haven't.
that.
Not today.
Absolutely. Not today. Listeners have to stay tuned.
Yeah.
All right. That's all we have, folks. Do you want to say goodbye?
Goodbye.
Goodbye. See you.
Hello, listeners. This is George with the Epic Meta Podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Did you know that you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and YouTube? You probably knew that one of those was the case, but the other ones are the case as well. Please be sure to click the like button if that's in accord with your reality. You can also share our podcast with your friends, give us a 5-star rating, and all of that. Please also give us your comments. Be very interested to read them. But more importantly than all of that, just continue to listen to the show. And as Thang would say, be good and be well until we meet again.